So I'm going to start with chapter 4, which is all about temperature. And so for temperature, you only need to know a few things, and here is your main key things here. Now this is on your PowerPoint, and it's comes up and it has 3 equations. So the first we want to do is look at, yours will probably say TF, and that equation for Fahrenheit, when you want to find the Fahrenheit of a temperature, is 9/5 of degrees Celsius plus 32. The next equation is degrees Celsius, or TC, and degrees Celsius comes to be 5/9, parentheses degrees Fahrenheit minus 32 degrees. And then how do you find Kelvin? And so Kelvin, or K, is equal to degrees Celsius plus 273. So if I was to show it to you, this is what it would look like. You want to know your degrees Fahrenheit. If you're given degrees Celsius, it's 9/5 degrees Celsius plus 32. If you want to find degrees Celsius and you're given Fahrenheit, it's 5/9 times Fahrenheit minus 32. And if you want to find Kelvin, you have degrees Celsius plus 273. The other equation is, if we are given Kelvin and we want to know Celsius, you would just have to rearrange this equation, meaning subtract 273 from both sides. And so then you would end up with degrees Celsius being equal to Kelvin minus 273. Alright, so for chapter 4, when we talk about temperature, these are the 4 equations that you want to have handy. So if we go back and we look at our worksheet, I want to work out one problem on each so that you would know how to do it. So here, I think 10, number 1 is easy. So we'll start with number 2 here. And so it says that we want to convert the following to Fahrenheit. So we are given 30 degrees Celsius. So if I want to convert to Fahrenheit and I'm given degrees Celsius, I must use this equation here, Fahrenheit equation. So let's move over to my sheet, and we'll say, starting with number 2, and I'm given 30 degrees Celsius, and I want to know what is Fahrenheit. All right, so then the equation I'll use is TF is equal to 9/5 degrees Celsius plus 32. All right, so if we continue this out, that's 9/5 times 30 degrees, because that's our degrees Celsius we're given, plus 32. So out further, if you do your order operations, you can do 5 will go into itself 1 time, 5 will go into 36 times, right? So you end up with Fahrenheit being 9 times 6 plus 32. All right, and 9 times 6, what is that? Off the top of my head, 36, 52, 54. I know, right? That took me absolutely too long. So 54 plus 32, meaning that we then end up with 86. All right. Check my math. I didn't have a calculator. I was doing it in my head. So therefore, we should end up, if we have 30 degrees Celsius, it ends up being 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? So this is how we do a Fahrenheit question if we're given the degrees Celsius. And so throughout this is what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to use these equations here. If you're given Celsius already, to find Fahrenheit, T of F. Given Fahrenheit, you want to know Celsius, use this equation. Given Celsius, want to know Kelvin, this equation. Given Kelvin, want to know Celsius, given that equation. All right, so we will move on to the next example. So I've shown you how you would use converting Celsius to Fahrenheit. So the next thing we will want to do is to convert the following to Celsius. So if we're given the degrees Fahrenheit. So again, I think number 6 would be easy. So we'll start with number 7. All right. And so I'm doing this so that you can go ahead and know how to work them, and then you can work the others on your own. But you have an example of how it should be done. All right. So looking at number 7, we're given 45 degrees Fahrenheit. And we want to convert 45 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. So that means we will use the equation Tc equals 5/9 Fahrenheit minus 32. Please don't get confused because I use Tc because that just means temperature of Celsius. If you see Tk, that's temperature of Kelvin, or Tf, temperature of Fahrenheit. I know what it says over here. I don't want to use those. I was used to writing T of F, T of C. This is what I learned in chemistry, and so that's how I do it. But it is nothing different. The equation is the same. So don't trip yourself up on logistics of, I wrote it this way, but the paper says it that way. That will never get you anywhere. Every professor does it differently. The next professor may not even write it this way. So just know that we always interchange. It could just be a C here, or F here, or it could be TLC, and that just stands for temperature of Kelvin, of Celsius. Sorry. All right, so moving on, we now will go ahead and do this. So 5/9, we have 45 minus 32. Where did I get the 45? Number 7 says 45 degrees Fahrenheit. So I just plugged and chugged, like I said before. So I plugged in 45 minus 32 times 5/9. All right, so you also always remember your order of operations. We've talked about this before, but you always want to make sure that you do so. So the first thing you want to do is work inside our parentheses. So 45 minus 32 will give us 13. So 5/9 times 13 is what it boils down to. And then for those who don't like doing math, that's really 5 times 13 over 9, because 13 is like being over 1. If that's too much math, I'm sorry. You were supposed to have math 120 before we took this class. So that means that 5 times 13 is equal to 65 over 9. And so 65 divided by 9 gives us 7.22. And the 2's keep going, so you put a line over it. And so then your answer is temperature of Celsius is 7.22. So 45 degrees Fahrenheit is really 7.22 degrees Celsius. So you see how I worked out that problem. Always starting in the parentheses first, and then multiplying by the 5/9, making sure that you take 5 times the number from the parentheses, dividing it by 9. That was 65 divided by 9, and that gave us 7.22. All right. Moving on, how to convert to Kelvin. If you have degrees Celsius, that means that we're going to use this equation here, where we have Kelvin equals C plus 273. So we'll go here, and we'll start with number 13, right? Because number 1 is really simple. So we'll start with number 13, which is negative 50 degrees Celsius. So negative 50 degrees Celsius. We want to know what Kelvin is. All right. So Kelvin is equal to Celsius plus 273. So that means Kelvin would equal to negative 50 plus 273. And negative 50 plus 273 is just like subtracting 50 from 273, which will leave us with 223. So negative 50 degrees Celsius is equal to 223 degrees Kelvin. Very simple, as I said before. So watch this magic trick if I change the page. Woo! And we'll move on to looking at converting to Celsius when you're given Kelvin. So remember, I did say that we had to change the equation in order to do that. So we go back and we say if Kelvin is equal to C plus 273, then Celsius is equal to K minus 273. All right. And so we're given K here. And so we'll start with number 16, which is 100 degrees. And so C is 100 minus 273. So we know minus is just like plus or negative. So that means that Celsius is 100 plus a negative 273, which is really subtraction, meaning that we end up with a negative 173. And so the answer for number 16 is 173, negative 173. And so now I have done for you, for each of these, an example. We have done conversion to Fahrenheit. Then we did a conversion to Celsius. Then I converted to Kelvin for you. And then we converted to Celsius using Kelvin. So the first thing you want to do is make sure when you're doing your exam that you have these here. These are the equations. This is your physics exam, so everything is based upon an equation. And so this is what you want to have with you, these equations. So as soon as the questions come up, you can plug and chug into the equations, and voila, you're done. All right.